You and I both know something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The greatest limitation you will ever face is not a lack of talent, nor a lack of intellect, nor a lack of opportunity. It is the quiet, persistent voice within you that whispers, "What if I'm not enough?" That single doubt, repeated often enough, becomes a chain around your potential. It becomes a heavy weight on the mind, the kind that slows your steps, clouds your judgment, and makes even simple decisions feel risky. People do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because they never learned how to trust the ability they already have. And if you've ever felt like your progress comes slower than it should, like something invisible keeps pulling you back every time you try to accelerate, then you're experiencing what I call the mental handbrake. It's the hidden force that keeps the engine running but prevents the car from moving. You feel the effort. You feel the desire. But the forward motion isn't there. This happens because self-doubt accumulates silently. Every time you hesitate instead of acting, every time you question a strength you've already demonstrated, every time you compare yourself to someone who started earlier or progressed faster, you reinforce a belief that you should never have adopted in the first place. People assume confidence appears on its own once success arrives. But it is the opposite. Confidence is the cause. Success is the effect. And when you understand this truth, when you genuinely internalize it, something powerful begins to change inside you. You realize you don't need more talent. You don't need more knowledge. You don't need more time. You need a trained mind, a mind that acts with conviction instead of hesitation, a mind that supports you instead of sabotaging you, a mind that believes in your ability to do exactly what you are trying to do. Today, I want to show you how to begin training that mind, not through wishes, not through empty encouragement, but through conscious, deliberate strategies that you can apply daily. When people hear the phrase "believe in yourself," they treat it like a slogan, as if belief is a soft, abstract idea floating somewhere above the practical world. But belief is not abstract, it is a skill. And like any skill, it improves with repetition, feedback, and consistency. The most successful people you admire are not braver than you. They are not luckier. They have simply mastered the process of directing their thoughts instead of being a passenger of them. They learned how to interrupt doubt before it becomes a decision. They learned how to choose the thoughts that empower them rather than the ones that slow them down. You have that same ability. You may not have cultivated it yet, but it is already within you. Every strength, every success you will experience in your future depends on your willingness to begin strengthening that internal belief. Your life changes the moment you decide that your inner voice must become a source of fuel rather than friction. That is the core promise of what you are about to learn. You will discover how to transform your mind into an ally that supports your progress, amplifies your potential, and pushes you forward when most people would stop. You will no longer wait for confidence to appear. You will create it, you will build it, and you will reinforce it every single day. Think for a moment about the opportunities you have already missed, not because you lacked capability, but because you lacked certainty. Think about the times you held back, even though you knew you could do more. Think about the moments when you allowed fear to speak louder than ambition. These memories are not meant to discourage you. They are meant to remind you of the cost of inaction. Pain is a powerful teacher when used correctly. It shows you where your current pattern is taking you. And reward, the pull of everything you want, shows you what becomes possible when you change that pattern. Your mind is always deciding between these two forces. When doubt rules, pain wins. When belief takes over, reward becomes inevitable. Belief is momentum. Once you begin generating it, you will feel yourself shifting from hesitation to speed. When you trust yourself, your decisions become clearer, your actions become faster, your results become more predictable, and people around you begin to sense something different in the way you speak, move, and carry yourself. They interpret it as confidence. But what you are truly building is alignment between your thoughts and your goals. It is one of the rarest forms of personal power. And today, you are going to learn how to create it intentionally. There is a reason I want you to stay until the very end. Not because I want your attention, but because the breakthrough you are seeking comes from understanding the complete process. Self-belief is not built through a single moment of insight. It is built through a sequence of mental habits that reinforce each other. You are going to learn how to interrupt the cycle of doubt the moment it begins. You are going to learn how to replace hesitation with purposeful action. You are going to learn how to generate the kind of inner certainty that turns an ordinary day into a day of progress. And most importantly, you are going to learn how to apply this process daily until your mind naturally defaults to confidence instead of fear. Your future expands the moment you accept that self-belief is not an emotion to wait for, but a discipline to train. And once you begin training it, once you begin practicing deliberate control over the thoughts that shape your actions, you will create a level of momentum that becomes nearly unstoppable. That is what I want for you. That is what you are capable of. And that is what we will build together starting right now. When you begin to understand your mind as a living garden, everything about your life starts to change. I want you to imagine, very vividly, that the space inside your mind is not empty. It is not chaotic. It is not random. It is a field of extraordinary potential, a landscape you walk through every single day, whether you are conscious of it or not. And in this garden, every thought you allow, every idea you repeat, every belief you reinforce becomes a seed dropped into the soil. Some of these seeds create strong roots that lift you upward. Others take hold quietly, growing into vines that restrict your movement without you even noticing at first. The great truth is that you are the one choosing which seeds are planted. People often look at their circumstances and assume that their surroundings dictate the quality of their thoughts. They believe that difficulty produces doubt, or that opportunity produces confidence. But that has never been true. Two people can live the same event, face the same challenge, experience the same setback, and yet one will plant seeds of fear while the other plants seeds of determination. It is not the environment that shapes the garden. It is the gardener. It is you. You choose what grows inside you today. When doubt appears, it does not appear on its own. It grows because you have watered it. You have repeated certain phrases to yourself, perhaps unconsciously. I don't know if I can. I'm not sure I'm ready. This is too difficult. What if I fail? Each repetition reinforces the seed. Each repetition deepens the roots, and eventually those doubts become part of your identity. You begin to behave as someone who is uncertain, hesitant, unable to trust himself. You act smaller than you are because the garden has been overtaken by weeds that were never pulled out. But the same mechanism works in your favor. When you plant seeds of discipline, when you plant responsibility, when you plant the belief that you are capable of change, when you remind yourself that you can take action right now to shape your future, confidence grows in precisely the same way doubt once did. It begins as a small seed, a simple intention. Then you water it with consistency, daily action, and repeated commitment. And over time, this new growth becomes part of who you are. You begin to see yourself as capable, reliable, and strong. You trust your own word. You follow through. You walk taller, speak clearer, and execute faster because the roots of self-belief hold you firmly upright. Most people live their entire lives without realizing the extent of this power. They react to circumstances instead of planting deliberately. They let other people scatter seeds in their garden through negative comments, criticism, or expectations. They consume information that feeds fear. They allow worry to take up space in the soil. They never pause long enough to ask themselves, who is actually planting in my mind, and do I want these thoughts to grow into anything? When you do not become intentional, your garden becomes overrun. Not because you are bad or broken, but because nature fills any unattended space. Neglect produces weeds, but attention, discipline, and personal responsibility produce a place of extraordinary beauty and strength. I want you to understand something essential. The soil of your mind does not discriminate. It will grow anything you choose, anything you repeat, anything you emotionally reinforce. If you plant worry, you will grow anxiety. If you plant excuses, you will grow procrastination. If you plant gratitude, you will grow resilience. If you plant clarity, you will grow direction. If you plant self-discipline, you will grow long-term confidence. The soil accepts all seeds equally, but only you choose which ones stay, and here is where most people limit themselves. They believe that the seeds already planted cannot be removed. They think the weeds that have taken hold define them permanently. But no belief is permanent. No thought must stay. You can pull out a limiting thought the moment you recognize it. You can replace it with a stronger one. You can rewrite old patterns. You can choose a new way of thinking today, regardless of how long the old way has been growing. You are never trapped by the garden you inherited. You are only limited by the garden you ignore. As you begin paying closer attention, you will notice that certain weeds announce themselves through your emotions. Feelings of hesitation, insecurity, confusion, guilt, or discouragement do not appear at random. They are signals, pointing you towards something that has grown without your permission. When you sense these emotions, I want you to pause, not to suppress them, not to resist them, but to examine them. Ask yourself, what thought is feeding this feeling? What seed was planted here? Awareness is the first tool of the master gardener, and with awareness you gain control. From this moment on, I want you to think of yourself not as someone who reacts to life, but as someone who cultivates it. Each morning you wake up, you step into the garden again. You pick up your tools, you decide what stays and what goes. You remove one weed, plant one strong thought, reinforce one belief that serves your future. That is how transformation occurs. Not in dramatic gestures, but in small, consistent acts of intention. And over weeks, months, and years, people will look at you and say, "How did he change so much?" And the answer will be simple: you tended your mind. The greatest thinkers, leaders, and achievers throughout history understood this principle deeply. They guarded their minds with the same vigilance one uses to guard a treasure. They fed themselves ideas that strengthened them. They surrounded themselves with people who elevated them. They rehearsed empowering beliefs until those beliefs became automatic. They refused to allow weeds to overtake their inner world. When challenges appeared, they returned to their garden and planted stronger seeds. When fear whispered, they planted courage. When uncertainty grew, they planted discipline. And in time, their inner garden produced the fruits of success. Your future depends entirely on what you choose to plant today, not tomorrow, not someday. Today, you are the gardener, and you hold the seeds. And in a moment, I will show you how to identify and remove the weeds that have been holding you back, one by one, with clarity and gentleness. But for now, stay with this idea a little longer. Let it settle into you, because once you grasp it fully, once you feel the truth of it resonate inside you, you will never again look at yourself or your life the same way. Every result you create will begin with this one realization: your mind is a garden, and you are its keeper. And with the right seeds, you can grow anything. Confidence is not an emotion you wait to feel. It is a behavior you practice until it becomes automatic. Most people never understand this simple truth. They treat confidence as something mystical, something that appears on good days and disappears on bad ones. They chase it, they hope for it, they negotiate with it. But genuine confidence does not work that way. It is closer to a habit than to a sensation. Think of brushing your teeth. You do not wake up and wonder whether you feel motivated to brush them. You simply do it because your identity contains the belief that a person like you takes care of himself. Confidence is built the same way. It is a commitment repeated until it becomes a natural part of who you are. The first step is to detach confidence from emotion. You may wake up tired, uncertain, or distracted, but your identity can still carry you forward. If you learn to act confidently, regardless of how you feel, your behavior begins to reprogram your self-image. Every time you take a small step forward, even when you don't feel ready, you reinforce the idea that you are a capable person. You may be surprised at how quickly this transforms your inner dialogue. The mind accepts repeated behavior as truth. If you repeatedly behave like someone who believes in himself, the mind begins to believe you. This shift becomes clearer when you examine the contrast between self-love and destructive self-criticism. Self-love is not indulgence. It is the deliberate choice to speak to yourself as someone worth supporting. Destructive self-criticism is the habit of attacking yourself for every imperfection. One builds momentum, the other destroys it. Over the years, I have met people who sabotage themselves every time they approach progress. They speak harshly to themselves, calling their weaknesses truth and dismissing their strengths as accidental. This constant internal punishment erodes their self-image until taking even the smallest step feels overwhelming. But when you choose self-love, you take responsibility for the quality of your inner voice. You begin to build an internal environment where growth becomes normal. You treat yourself as someone who deserves to rise, and that belief starts shaping how you behave. Another powerful contrast is decisive action versus paralysis. Successful people move quickly. They understand that hesitation weakens the mind, while action strengthens it. When you act decisively, even if imperfectly, you train yourself to trust your judgment. The habit of choosing and moving gives you a sense of control over your life. Meanwhile, paralysis trains the opposite identity. Every time you avoid a decision, you silently reinforce the belief that you cannot rely on yourself. You may have noticed that the more you hesitate, the harder it becomes to take any step at all. But the opposite is just as true. Once you begin to act decisively, momentum builds in your favor. Each action becomes evidence that you are capable. This is how confidence grows. One choice, one action, repeated until it defines your character. There is also the contrast between emotional independence and the need for external validation. Many people live their entire lives seeking approval. They constantly measure their value through the eyes of others. This creates a fragile identity that collapses the moment criticism appears. But emotional independence means you decide who you are and what you are worth. You choose your path, you set your standards, and you live by them. When you learn to validate yourself, confidence becomes stable. It stops fluctuating with the opinions around you. You no longer let someone else's mood determine your direction. Every day you reinforce the belief that you are the one steering your life. This internal stability is one of the most important qualities a person can develop. Confidence becomes a daily habit when you weave these contrasts into your life. You practice self-love instead of self-criticism. You take decisive action instead of freezing in uncertainty. You rely on your own evaluation instead of seeking constant approval. These repeated behaviors accumulate. Over time, they become your identity. And identity is far more powerful than motivation. When motivation fades, identity carries you. When fear appears, identity steadies you. When doubt whispers in your ear, identity answers with a firm, quiet voice. I move forward anyway. Think for a moment about the person you want to become. Imagine the version of yourself who already possesses the confidence you desire. How does that person think? How does that person speak to himself? How does he act when he faces uncertainty? The more clearly you can picture this identity, the easier it becomes to behave like him today. And each time you behave like him, you strengthen the neural pathways that turn this identity into your reality. This is not imagination. It is mental training. The brain responds to repetition. If you repeat the identity of a confident person long enough, The brain accepts it as truth. You may wonder how long this transformation takes. In my experience, it begins immediately. The moment you choose to behave differently, something inside you shifts. You take ownership, you take responsibility, and from that moment forward, every repetition builds on the last. Confidence grows not from occasional breakthroughs, but from consistent habits practiced daily. One day you will catch yourself acting with a level of assurance that surprises you. You will realize you no longer need to force confidence. It has become who you are. Later, you will learn how to update your mental software, the deep internal dialogue that shapes your beliefs and choices. Once you understand how to rewrite that inner script, you will find it even easier to maintain this new identity. But for now, your task is simple. Practice the habits of confidence every day. Act in alignment with the person you want to become. Speak to yourself as someone worth believing in. Take decisive steps. Stand on your own emotional foundation. Repeat these actions until they feel natural and automatic. At that point, you will no longer chase confidence. You will embody it. It will not be something you try to create. It will be something you carry with you, quietly and consistently, in everything you do. When you stand in front of a mirror, you are not simply looking at your reflection. You are looking at the single most influential person you will ever meet. The mirror is a stage on which your identity is rehearsed every morning, long before you speak a word to anyone else. In those first quiet seconds, when your eyes lock onto your own, you begin writing the script for the kind of day you will live. Most people never realize this. They look at their reflection and see only a face, a hairstyle, a flaw, a feature they wish were different. They step into their day unaware that they have already spoken to themselves, already judged themselves, already determined the emotional rhythm they will bring into every conversation, challenge, or decision that follows. The truth is that your internal dialogue begins the moment you see yourself, and that dialogue becomes the foundation for your confidence, your choices, and eventually, your destiny. For many years of my life, I didn't understand how powerful this moment was. I would wake up and rush through the morning, barely conscious of my own thoughts. But over time, through thousands of conversations with high performers across the world, I began to notice a striking pattern. The people who consistently performed at the highest levels all had one habit in common. They had mastered the way they spoke to themselves. They didn't wait for encouragement from the world. They built it internally. They didn't hope to feel strong. They created strength through deliberate self-dialogue. And when I asked them about the moment this began each day, many of them described the same ritual, looking into the mirror and choosing the identity they would bring into the world. You may not realize it, but your brain is listening intensely to every word you speak when you look at yourself. Neuroscientists have shown that self-directed speech activates the same neural pathways involved in learning, motivation, and long-term behavior change. That means that every time you speak to yourself with confidence, clarity, and intention, you are literally wiring your brain toward higher levels of performance. Your body language shifts, your facial expression changes, your posture straightens. Your voice deepens with certainty. You begin to radiate a quiet, steady power that others can feel even before you speak. Most people use this psychological tool without precision. They stand in front of the mirror and let old beliefs run the show. They remember past failures. They replay old criticisms. They focus on what's missing instead of what's possible. They rehearse the identity of a person who doubts, hesitates, and retreats. And all of this happens so quickly that they don't even realize they've chosen the role of their greatest critic. But you can make a different choice. You can decide that each morning you will become your strongest coach. A coach who pushes you, supports you, challenges you, and believes in your potential more fiercely than anyone else ever has. When you begin mirror work with intention, something extraordinary happens. You start to notice the tone of your voice as you speak to yourself. You notice how your face looks when you say words like, "I can," "I will," and I am capable. You notice how your chest expands when you choose a powerful identity rather than a fearful one. Day by day, these small changes accumulate. Your internal dialogue stops sounding like an echo from the past and starts sounding like the voice of the person you are becoming. This is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Because the more clearly you speak to yourself about who you intend to be, the more aligned your behaviors become with that identity. People often ask me what to say during mirror work. The answer is simple. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you are responsible for guiding toward their full potential. If a young person came to you discouraged, would you criticize them? Would you focus on their weaknesses? Would you tell them what they can't do? Of course not. You would lift them. You would remind them of their strengths. You would speak with clarity, compassion, and expectation. You deserve that same level of encouragement. You deserve words that lift you. You deserve a tone that builds you. You deserve to look into your own eyes and see someone worth investing in. This practice also trains your emotional resilience. Every time you choose a powerful internal dialogue, you reinforce the idea that you are in control of your emotional state. Instead of waiting for life to give you permission to feel strong, you create strength from within. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you prepare yourself for them. Your mind becomes quieter, your decisions become sharper, your presence becomes stronger. Others notice the difference immediately. They may not know what changed, but they will feel it. They will sense the confidence in the way you walk, the certainty in the way you speak, and the calmness in the way you respond to challenges. The mirror becomes a rehearsal space where you practice being the person you aspire to be, until eventually that practiced identity becomes natural. This is one of the most powerful forms of personal development because it bypasses theory and moves directly into lived experience. When you tell yourself every morning that you are disciplined, you begin acting with discipline. When you tell yourself that you are focused, your mind begins filtering distractions more effectively. When you tell yourself that you are capable of doing great things, your brain begins searching for ways to confirm that belief. The power of this practice grows with repetition. The more consistently you speak to yourself with intention, the more deeply the message embeds itself into your subconscious mind. And once a belief reaches your subconscious, it becomes automatic. You don't have to think about acting confidently because confidence becomes your default state. You don't have to force yourself to take responsibility because responsibility becomes part of who you are. You don't have to push yourself to pursue excellence because excellence becomes the standard you naturally bring into everything you do. Every morning you face a choice. You can be the critic who reminds you of your limitations, or you can be the coach who reminds you of your strengths. You can rehearse the identity that keeps you small, or you can rehearse the identity that unlocks your potential. And the beautiful truth is that no matter what happened yesterday, you get a fresh opportunity today, a fresh stage, a fresh script, a fresh chance to speak to yourself in a way that shapes the path ahead. As you continue with this process, you'll begin noticing subtle shifts. Moments that used to intimidate you will feel easier. Challenges that once overwhelmed you will feel manageable. The voice of doubt will grow quieter, and the voice of strength will grow louder. This isn't magic, it's psychology. Your brain responds to repetition, emotion, and intention. When you combine all three, transformation becomes inevitable. And remember this, every time you walk away from the mirror after speaking powerfully to yourself, you carry that energy into the world. Your interactions become more positive. Your decisions become more confident. Your problems become more solvable. Your day becomes a reflection of the identity you rehearsed. In the next section, you'll discover how to anchor these new habits so deeply that they become automatic, effortless, and permanent, giving you the ability to direct your life with clarity and certainty every single day. Action over. Emotion is one of the greatest turning points in a person's life. When you discover that action is the trigger that unlocks confidence, not the other way around, everything you believe about your potential begins to shift. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait for motivation, inspiration, the perfect moment, or the warm glow of certainty. But life does not reward waiting. It rewards movement. When you understand this, you begin to see yourself not as a passive observer of your life, but as an engineer of it. You begin to realize that every step you take shapes you far more than every thought you delay. I've coached thousands of people, and the same principle reveals itself again and again. The longer you postpone an action, the more power you give to doubt. Procrastination is not a time problem, it's an identity problem. The moment you choose not to act, your mind generates narratives to justify inaction, and these narratives erode your belief in yourself. But when you take even the smallest step forward, you interrupt that cycle entirely. With one simple action, your brain says, "I can do this." And that sentence has the power to rebuild who you believe you are. Imagine building your confidence like laying a path brick by brick. One brick each day may not feel like much. You may not even notice it at first. But that small, steady movement accumulates in ways that are almost invisible in the beginning and undeniable in the long run. Confidence is not something you find. It's something you build. It is the byproduct of a consistent pattern of choosing progress over hesitation. Every small action is a vote for the person you intend to become. Every time you do what you said you would do, your mind registers that you are trustworthy. And when you trust yourself, confidence becomes a natural response, not an artificial effort. You might think that clarity comes first, but clarity is created by action. When you move, you learn. When you experiment, you gather feedback. And when you take initiative, you accelerate your understanding. Standing still keeps everything blurry. Taking action brings the picture into focus. Many people say they are confused, uncertain, or lacking direction, but very often the confusion is merely the side effect of doing nothing. If you want clarity, you must do something. Even if the action is imperfect, it sets a chain reaction in motion. Suddenly you are not in the dark anymore. You are generating the very light you need to see. Inside every person, there is a reservoir of potential waiting to be accessed, but potential is activated only through movement. Some of the most successful individuals I've met built their entire careers on this principle. They were not the most talented at the beginning. They were not the smartest or the most connected, but they possessed a willingness to move when others hesitated. They took one step, then another, then another. Over time, those small steps created an enormous competitive advantage. They built momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Once you experience it, you feel almost pulled forward by your own progress. As you read this, you might be remembering the times in your life when a small action changed everything. Maybe it was the job application you finally sent, the conversation you finally initiated, the routine you finally started, or the habit you returned to after abandoning it. It didn't seem monumental at first, but over time, you realized that one movement opened a series of doors you could not have predicted. That single moment of courage revealed capacities within you that had been waiting for permission to emerge. This is the nature of action. It does not just move your life externally, it transforms you internally. Today, your task is simple. Think of 3 small actions you can take immediately, not tomorrow, not someday. 3 movements that are so clear and so manageable that you cannot talk yourself out of them. When you write them down, you send a signal to your mind that you are preparing to act. When you complete them, you demonstrate to yourself that progress is within reach. These actions do not need to be dramatic. A phone call you've avoided, a page you've been meaning to write, 10 minutes of organizing that drawer you always postpone. The power is not in the size of the action. The power is in its completion. When you finish something, no matter how small, your brain releases a surge of energy and satisfaction that encourages you to continue. This process retrains your identity. You become someone who moves, someone who follows through, someone who chooses progress even when emotions tempt you to delay. Your emotions will fluctuate, but your actions can remain consistent. And the more consistent you become, the more resilient and confident you feel. Eventually, you build a reputation with yourself. You begin to believe that you can count on your own word. That belief will carry you through challenges, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty with far more strength than any motivational burst. The beauty of this principle is that it scales. It works today, it works tomorrow, and it works 10 years from now. Every successful life is built through the accumulation of small, purposeful actions repeated over time. When you commit to even one brick a day, you guarantee that your future becomes a structure of your own construction rather than a consequence of drifting. And soon you will learn something even more powerful. You will discover how world-class performers use the mind to maintain confidence even under pressure, even in moments of fear, even when everything around them seems uncertain. You are about to understand how they think, how they prepare, and how they build an unshakable inner foundation that carries them to results others believe are impossible. That lesson is coming next. Stay ready, because once you learn it, the way you approach, every challenge in your life will change forever. Mental training is one of the most underestimated forces behind extraordinary achievement, yet it is the common denominator among people who rise to the top of every field. When I first began studying high performers decades ago, I was struck by a simple truth. Long before they stepped onto the stage, into the arena, or into the meeting that would change their lives, they had already lived that moment in their minds. They had rehearsed the details, felt the sensations, heard the sounds, and experienced the emotional reality of success. Their nervous system did not meet the moment as a surprise. It met it as something familiar. This is the quiet discipline that separates those who hope from those who expect. Visualization is often misunderstood. People imagine it as daydreaming or wishful thinking, something soft or idealistic. But those who have mastered it know it is a discipline as real as strength training and as structured as any strategic plan. When you visualize clearly and repeatedly, you are training your brain to recognize opportunities, eliminate hesitation, and perform with a sense of inevitability. You are feeding your subconscious instructions until it accepts them as commands. The mind becomes your partner, not your obstacle. It begins to clear the path ahead of you, so that when the moment comes, you feel a quiet recognition, as though you are simply stepping into the next scene of a movie you have already watched many times. One of the most powerful techniques is to imagine success with vivid sensory detail. This means seeing the environment around you, hearing the tones of the voices, feeling the textures, the temperature, the weight of the tools you use, the rhythm of your breathing. When you add sensation, your mind treats the experience as real. Your heart rate changes, your muscles prime themselves, your focus sharpens. You begin to move from wishing to rehearsing. You stop hoping something will go well and start preparing yourself to make it go well. This distinction changes lives. Great athletes use this technique before stepping into competition. Great leaders do it before delivering a presentation. Great entrepreneurs do it before negotiating. They build a mental blueprint of the outcome they desire, and with repetition, the mind aligns itself with that blueprint. Suddenly, actions that once felt difficult become natural. The brain does not have to reinvent the path. It simply follows the plan it has already walked through thousands of times. The true purpose of visualization is alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are all aligned toward one direction, you become capable of extraordinary consistency. The world responds to people who move with clarity. They speak differently. They walk differently. They radiate a confidence that is not loud but solid. It is the confidence of someone who has already been there. Yet, there is a dimension of mental training that many people avoid because it asks something uncomfortable. It asks for authenticity. It asks you to remove the masks you have accumulated from fear, social pressure, or the desire to be accepted. These masks may seem helpful at first, like armor to protect you from criticism or judgment. But over time, they become heavy. They drain your confidence because they force you to perform a version of yourself that is disconnected from your truth. And every time you act against your deeper values, you weaken the foundation of your character. When you live in alignment with your true values, something remarkable happens. Your decisions become clearer. Your inner voice becomes stronger. You begin to trust yourself. Confidence, in its purest form, is self-trust. It is the quiet belief that you can handle whatever comes because you are not pretending. There is no internal conflict. You are not spending mental energy holding up a facade. You are simply being yourself, fully and consistently. This alignment creates inner certainty, and inner certainty is the engine of achievement. Authenticity also enhances performance because it frees cognitive resources that were once used to maintain an image. When you no longer wonder what others think of you, you gain the ability to focus completely on the task. When you no longer worry about appearing successful, you can devote your attention to becoming successful. The energy that once leaked through insecurity becomes available for discipline, creativity, and bold action. Authenticity is also magnetic. People trust those who are real. They respect those who stand firmly in their principles. They follow those who speak from experience rather than from a script. Every great leader I have studied has a moment in their life when they stopped trying to imitate someone else and decided to fully inhabit themselves. That is the day their influence began. And here is the truth most people overlook. Your mind cannot fully support a vision that contradicts your identity. You cannot visualize a future that feels foreign to who you believe you are. Mental rehearsal only becomes powerful when your identity supports the vision, and your identity only becomes strong when it is built on authenticity. When your vision and your identity align, you move like someone who knows where he is going. You walk into rooms differently. You learn faster. You persist longer. You become more resilient because you no longer negotiate with your doubts. Your mind is a garden, and visualization is the intentional planting of seeds. But authenticity is the soil. Without it, nothing grows with strength. When you combine both, you create a force that shapes your future from the inside out. You are no longer reacting to life, you are directing it. As you continue reading and reflecting, keep an open mind. You are building new mental habits. You are learning to see yourself differently. And this shift will change the trajectory of your results. Before we close, I'll reveal the 30-day mental diet that transforms your mind. It is the most practical, disciplined way to recondition your thinking so that your new identity and your new vision become permanent. Once you follow it, you will never think the same way again. You are standing at a crossroads that every successful person arrives at sooner or later. It is the moment where you choose what you allow into your mind and what you refuse to entertain any longer. The world around you is constantly feeding you ideas, thoughts, impressions, and emotions. Every word you hear, every conversation you participate in, every headline you read, and every video you watch is a form of mental nutrition. It either nourishes you or it drains you. It builds you up or it chips away at your confidence. The quality of your inner life is a direct reflection of the quality of the information you consume each day. Most people walk through life unaware of this simple truth. They allow anything and anyone to shape their thinking. They let negativity seep into their mind until it becomes familiar. And once it becomes familiar, it becomes comfortable. And once it becomes comfortable, it becomes part of their identity. But you are not most people. You are here, listening, learning, and opening the door to a new level of awareness. You are ready to take control of what you feed your mind. You are ready for a 30-day mental diet that can transform the way you think, feel, and act. A diet is not about denial. It is about cleansing. It is about clarity. It is about strengthening the mind so it works for you instead of against you. When you commit to a mental diet, you make a decision that for the next 30 days, you will eliminate all mental toxins. You will stay away from people who complain. You will distance yourself from those who gossip. You will refuse to participate in conversations that diminish your hope or confidence. You will stop consuming news that leaves you feeling powerless. You will stop comparing yourself to others on social media. You will stop allowing the fears and doubts of others to take root in your mind. And instead of all that noise, you will feed your mind with ideas that empower and elevate you. You will read something inspiring every day. You will listen to people who encourage growth. You will speak to yourself kindly. You will take a few quiet minutes each morning to remind yourself of what you want and why you want it. You will fill your environment with thoughts that remind you of your potential. At first, you may feel a surprising resistance. The mind becomes addicted to its familiar patterns, even when those patterns create unhappiness. But if you persist, something remarkable begins to happen. Your thoughts become lighter. Your emotions become steadier. You begin to feel a sense of personal strength rising from within. You notice that you are no longer so easily discouraged. You begin to rely on yourself. And this is the great secret of self-confidence. It is not built in a moment. It is built in small decisions repeated daily. Believing in yourself is not a single event. It is a process. It requires renewal. Every day you wake up, you must choose to believe again. You must select thoughts that support your goals rather than sabotage them. You must remind yourself of who you are becoming, not who you used to be. If you stay consistent, you will discover one of the greatest truths of personal achievement. Your outer life will always adjust to match your inner world. As you strengthen your beliefs, your actions change. As your actions change, your results improve. And as your results improve, your entire identity begins to evolve. You start seeing yourself as someone capable, disciplined, and strong. You start trusting your own judgment. You feel comfortable making decisions that previously filled you with doubt. You stop looking for permission. You stop waiting for reassurance. You become the source of your own confidence. This is the purpose of the 30-day mental diet. It trains your mind to support you. It helps you build the inner foundation required to create anything you truly desire. But like any transformation, it requires a moment of commitment, a decision, a line drawn in the sand. You make that decision not with fear, but with honesty. You tell yourself the truth, that the life you want is on the other side of your habits, your thoughts, and your beliefs. And the only person with the power to change those is you. You step into that power fully. You accept responsibility for your inner world. And once you accept responsibility, you take back control. You begin to feel the freedom that comes when you realize you are not a victim of circumstance. You are the author of your future. As you take this step, I want to leave you with a simple affirmation. Say it with conviction. Say it until it sinks into your heart. Today, I choose to believe in myself. Those 8 words contain the seed of everything you desire. Say them and mean them. Say them publicly if you want to make the commitment even stronger. Write them in the comments. Today, I choose to believe in myself. When you put your decision into words, you create accountability. You create momentum. You tell your subconscious mind that you are serious, that you are committed, that you are ready to rise to the next level. And if you want to continue growing, continue learning, and continue strengthening the beliefs that shape your future, subscribe to this channel. Stay with me until the end of each video because the strategies I share are designed to unlock deeper levels of confidence and performance. Each step builds on the last. Each idea prepares you for the next breakthrough. You will gain clarity. You will develop discipline. You will discover a version of yourself capable of far more than you have imagined. Your future begins with a choice, and you are making that choice today. Believe in yourself. Feed your mind with the best ideas available to you. Guard your thoughts as carefully as you guard your most valuable possessions, because your thoughts, when aligned with belief, are the most powerful force you possess. The next 30 days will not just change your habits, they will change your identity. And once your identity changes, your life will follow. You are ready, you are capable, you are stronger than you think. Today, you choose to believe in yourself, and that choice will shape everything that comes next.